Hello and welcome to our UFC 264 post show. I'm John Pollock. That means I'm joined by the one and only Phil Chertok. Here we are, live. It's almost 1 in the morning. How are you, Phil?
I'm doing pretty good. I'm happy to be here, before 1 in the morning, on a pretty exciting night of pretty good fights and some wild finishes.
Yes, I went into this one and I thought to myself, just looking at the card, like there were some fights I felt pretty confident Thompson and Burns would go the distance. I thought that Tuivasa and Greg Hardy was either going to be a plodding 3 round ugly heavyweight fight, or it would be what we got. I didn't think the main event was going to go into championship rounds. So I was thinking on paper, in theory, this could be an early night for us. But you know what? With the thankfully, thanks to lots of padding, we are here at the ultra late slash very early hour of nearly 1 in the morning.
Oh yeah, the UFC and ESPN, they kicked it up to another level with the pre-fight packages today and the segments. I have some more to say about that at the end of the show, but I think we should focus on the fights first.
We will talk about some of the production elements of tonight's broadcast, but what everyone wants to hear is our thoughts on the main event. Dustin Poirier and Conor McGregor, their third fight. Will it be their final fight? That was the question as we went off the broadcast. But this was, there's so much to say about these 5 minutes that we have to dissect, Phil, because, I mean, immediately, just when it comes to Conor McGregor, you are going to overanalyze and read into everything just based on sort of his demeanor throughout fight week, right up until the entrance. Like, what was kind of your vibe you were getting from Conor McGregor, who this was certainly a callback to the Conor of old, although I feel in 2021, not exactly connecting at the level the former Conor did, but definitely a complete turn from what we saw in the lead up to the fight in January. Totally different style of promotion.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, yeah, as you said, it was more akin to the type of Conor we saw in the first Poirier fight and in the Khabib fight, and others of the fights where he was just a little bit more nasty with his opponents. Maybe the Jose Aldo fight comes to mind. A lot of people made of it that, he wasn't getting in Poirier's head, which I totally agreed with. Poirier had been there, done that. But I think it was just as much an exercise for himself. I think he felt he needed that edge going into this fight. And so I think that's why he was intentionally, doing that throughout the build-up.
I would agree with that. I think that a lot of people understand sort of the calculus that Conor McGregor plays with. This to me is not something where it is a guy trying to quote unquote sell a fight. I think we saw with the last fight in January, that was an enormously successful fight. I think this is very much just it's Conor's mental warfare that's proven to be very successful in the past. And I think in this, I think you could almost detect, like, at different points, almost a sense of frustration, because Dustin Poirier, I think, was just someone that I think he saw what this game was. And I think a lot of the fan base can see what the game is now. And that's why I don't think they were necessarily as emotionally charged by any of the comments. I think everyone understood this game plan and what Conor was trying to do and recreate that first fight from 7 years ago.
Yeah, and it's also kind of difficult to take shots at Dustin Poirier when the UFC has built him up as somebody who has this charity and gives back to his community in Louisiana. So it's very difficult to paint him as a villain to the audience. It was a lot easier the first fight because nobody knew who Dustin Poirier was, and Conor McGregor was the guy who was up and coming that you wanted to see win. I thought he did look a little bit nervous in the dressing room right before the walkouts, which was a
Dustin
bit unusual.
or Conor?
Conor did.
Okay.
But by the walkout, he kind of, he got into, fight mode. But even in the fight, like, he looked worried at points, and he should have been.
I can just say that just based on all of the tension this week. Just that feeling you had when this fight began. Like, I think this fight is going to be massive. If this hits 2 million buys, it's not going to stun me in the least.
Yeah, I wouldn't be surprised by that. If I'm gonna give a little guesstimate. I'm gonna say 1.85. 1.85
Okay.
is my number. One thing that might draw the number down is the fact that now bars are open. So it's like more people can congregate in a single place to watch one of these events. So the person buy rate may be down. So, but it may be more total people see it because they gathered in parties and the like. But that's my number. But if it hits 2 million, it wouldn't surprise me. There was a lot of buzz. I got messages from people I don't normally get. Our own Jordan Goodman mentioned to me that he's watching this fight and he can't even remember the last time he saw a UFC fight. So definitely a lot of casual interest, as you saw with the celebrities in attendance.
Oh, we got to see all of them. No, correction, we did not get to see all of them present in the building, but were not shown on camera tonight. Donald Trump and Jake Paul did not get any camera time. Were you surprised by either of those omissions?
Surprised by, not terribly surprised, a little bit by Trump because of the relationship with the UFC, but he's such a polarizing figure that from a television standpoint, it's like, why create that stir?
I was just interested to see, Jake Paul, I completely understand. I don't think they wanted, they didn't want a recreation of what they did earlier this year that really just gave Jake Paul access to the UFC audience and has been able to be able to siphon off of that in a very strategic way. With Donald Trump, I was just curious to see because, they did the exact same when he was in office and showed up to, it was the Diaz-Masvidal fight and did not show him in the crowd. I was just curious tonight.
They did show him in the crowd.
Did they?
Did show him? Yes, in that event.
On the broadcast?
Yes, absolutely. Yes, 100%.
Okay, then I'm remembering this wrong because I was
no.
I thought that they did.
Yeah.
I remember watching videos of him coming into the arena and everyone reacting, but I totally blank on him being shown on camera.
There was definitely a moment. It was it? Yeah, it was that fight because they wanted to set it up because it was supposed to be Covington and it didn't work out that way. But he definitely got shown on camera. I'm sure we can find a GIF or somebody in the Discord will post that.
All right. Well, we're going down the rabbit hole.
Sorry, fans.
Let's talk about the fight. Conor McGregor comes out of the gate and he is immediately throwing spin kicks towards Poirier, and then both are exchanging leg kicks. And it was interesting to see Conor have such a reliance on leg kicks in the early going. And this was nonstop for the time that it lasted. McGregor landed this left hand over the top, and then Poirier closed the distance, and he starts landing with his left hand, shoots against the fence, and then Conor McGregor, outing himself as a clear follower of our previous shows, decided he was going to go for that prop bet. McGregor by submission, because he wraps his arm around Dustin, and he goes for a jumping guillotine, and ends up putting his back on the mat. And this place, my God, you would have thought that Gilbert Burns was coming out for an encore here in the main event based on what they thought was going to happen here. I did not for a second believe that Dustin Poirier was in the slightest bit of trouble. And that was so evident by the setup for this and just it's Dustin Poirier in a guillotine, second of all. Dustin pops out of it. And now Conor is in a lot of trouble because he is underneath Dustin Poirier, who just gave this dude a steady diet of elbows. But to his credit, Conor was firing off with elbows off of his back. He was throwing up kicks. And the fight comes to a close as Conor gets to his feet in the closing seconds. Both men go to connect and they miss. And this is where Conor rolls his left ankle in a contorted fashion, goes down, and Dustin is just destroying him with strikes to the point, Phil, and this is before we're even aware of the state of McGregor's leg. I think Herb Dean could have stopped this. He was just annihilating Conor, and I think everyone was simply looking at the clock instead of the damage being done. And for a referee, it does not matter if there are 2 seconds left in a round or 3 minutes left in a round. You are judging it equally. I thought this fight was over, and in fact it was, because Conor cannot get up. He does reach the end of the round, but his ankle and leg are totally messed up here. He cannot get up off of the canvas, and there is a doctor's stoppage after the first round. But this was a super entertaining 5 minutes, the duration of how it landed or ended. Just not a great finish for most fans.
Yeah, disappointing always to have a fight end on an injury, particularly such a brutal one that's going to be so tough to recover from. But yeah, for the 5 minutes that it lasted, it was complete fireworks. I agree that Herb Dean could have stopped it. I think maybe I think why it looked more to us like it should have been stopped was because it looked like Conor had been dropped with a punch and then followed up with. Turns out that wasn't the case. So maybe Herb saw... It was actually worse
than the viewer at home thought, because we thought he had just suffered a knockdown. In fact, his ankle could be shattered.
Yes, and he actually points to it, and he points to it in the moment too. And it's like it was in some ways it was reminiscent of the first fight, because Conor lost that leg, had to roll back to the cage, and he's just defending. He's helpless. He eats a shot and then ends up getting knocked out. And here it's like he lost the leg, and he almost, he didn't get knocked out, but he was getting beaten down and the fight was over. So he got TKO'd.
What did Conor McGregor show you in this fight versus fight number 2? Were you left, let's put the injury aside, everything prior to the injury. What did you take from Conor's performance?
It was roughly the same. I didn't strike me as too much difference. He did come out with I suspected that he would have a different strategy of being on the outside or potentially on the inside. In this case, he was on the outside. And
did you, landing I'm sorry to interrupt, but I know Conor's been saying this in all of his interviews, but then to hear Joe Rogan as they're right about the start and they're talking about the second fight, and Joe just pipes in, well, he was preparing for a boxing fight. It was like, oh, he didn't even train for the last fight, just completely throwing this out. It's
I think it's more it just spoke to the fact that he was so lead leg heavy, and that's what left him susceptible, right? That's the story that Conor's trying to tell, right? It's like, I was just, because, I left myself open to this attack. That's the only reason why this guy got it. And he tried to make adjustments, but there was more adjustments that needed to be made than just figuring out a way to deal with leg kicks, or Poirier has a lot of tools. And look, Conor was landing a few times, but the second that Poirier touched him, he backed off right away. And I think that's a direct result of being knocked out in his last fight. You don't want to get knocked out again when it happens to you. It's so you can't escape that fear. And he tried really hard, but anytime Poirier touched him, he backed off nervously, and it led to him getting taken down.
There may be a time, for everyone there is, where you can't always eat that shot. In his career, Dustin Poirier can eat Conor's best shot. We saw it in the last fight. He touched him in this fight. Dustin was fine. He walked through those strikes. And I think with Conor, that is, if you were clinging to a belief that Conor was going to reverse his fortunes from the last fight, it was going to be early, and it was going to be with that left hand. And I am just not convinced that was going to be enough. And I thought it was yes, maybe he saw an opening with that guillotine, but I just thought, man, you really took yourself out of any advantageous position by going for that guillotine that I don't think the strongest Conor McGregor supporter was really going to believe he could have finished off, and found himself in a terrible position.
I will, to be fair to him, it was a very strong guillotine. He was deep on it. He did force Poirier to go over the top, and had the cage position.
He worked for a better position, but man, initially, Phil, when he gets to his back, dude, he doesn't even have his legs wrapped around him. It was not. I think he got a better position on it, but I think that was almost Dustin, almost going more into the guillotine.
Well, you're right. He didn't have his legs around him and he was trying to secure that. But the fact that Poirier had to elevate his legs so far, had they been in the center of the cage, Conor could have used that to reverse the position and get on top because it would have been so deep. And you've seen that a lot. But the cage stopped it. And Poirier's experience, he got his hand in the right position. At that point, Conor should have just bailed ship and moved on. But he continued to maintain it, ended up losing the position entirely and getting beaten down. So, but anyway, neither here nor there. It wasn't a close submission to being finished. And yeah, it was a big mistake in the short run of the fight, or long run, I guess.
So in the follow-up, after, first of all, Conor is on the ground, and if you listen, he is screaming at somebody to make sure that this goes down as a doctor's stoppage, which it did, and that is how it was acknowledged. I guess that was of the utmost importance here. Poirier was interviewed first by Joe Rogan, and he thought that Conor first injured his leg when one of his kicks got checked by Dustin. And he thinks that is what caused potentially a break. And then when he rolled the ankle later, damage had already been done. That was his theory. And he said that Conor was pulling at his gloves when he was trying to throw the up kicks. Dustin was trying to tell Herb Dean that. He called Conor a dirtbag, and that karma isn't a bitch, she's a mirror. And for all you people that are booing me, you can kiss my whole asshole.
The whole thing.
The whole thing. Yes.
The whole thing. The whole asshole thing. The asshole thing.
Dustin had nothing left here for this audience that was booing him. He sets himself up for Charles Oliveira. I think that this is a very simple path towards a championship. It makes almost so much sense that I'm expecting an interim title to be introduced over the next few months for some reason. And then Conor was interviewed, and he's just yelling, "This is not over." He went against Dustin's theory about the checked leg kick, and then just starts yelling about Dustin's wife getting into his DMs, and this guy just angling for another fight with Dustin Poirier. Sure, there's always going to be an audience for the next Conor McGregor fight. This is not one of them for me. Me, just personally, I have seen the outcome of this rivalry, and I think that Dustin Poirier will win a fourth fight if they have one on top of this. I don't know what is next for Conor McGregor in the immediate future. He's facing what's probably a pretty significant injury. Yeah,
I mean, looks like a clear fracture of, ankle. I mean, I'm not going to say which bone. Obviously, I can't. But
you mean you're not Dr. Phil?
No, unfortunately. And it's a lengthy road to recovery. And who's he going to face? And it's a huge buildup. Although it does create a new story, right? Because this is a new Conor McGregor comeback story. But against Dustin Poirier, no, that story is over. Interestingly enough, for these last two fights, Conor McGregor looked fairly lean. And we always thought that he struggled to make 145. I almost wonder if 145 is a better fit for him. Because
if you look at his record, Phil, I mean, it's not even close. Like, of the three weight classes, featherweight was where he had his greatest success. And if we're looking at power, I mean, he's like, Dustin ate his best strikes. And that's, Dustin is a giant lightweight as well. But I mean, a lot of these guys that he would be fighting at 155 pounds are big lightweights. You're talking as well, like a lot of faster fighters at 145. I look at Conor McGregor now, and this to me is very much a crossroads. Not so much of does he fight again? I feel that happens, but does he look at this? Okay, this is a clear exit out of any championship picture. Like, take the biggest fights that come your way. Entertain the Nate Diaz fight. Look at a Nick Diaz fight. You know what I mean? Like, just, is that the future of, if Conor McGregor is interested in continuing to fight, like, what is going to push him? Is it going to be going to featherweight and fighting, like, what are the names at featherweight that are really going to draw you in? Certainly, like, a rematch with Max Holloway is super compelling. I don't think that's a pretty fight in 2020. Well, I'll say 2022 at this point.
Yeah, I agree with that. I think that is the one thing that prevents the featherweight return is the lack of names. Um, this sort of reminds me of the position he was in after the Habib fight, and he took all that time off and he came back to fight Cowboy, right? He took a big step back that set him on track. Why not do that again? I mean, Nate kind of makes sense, but that's another big boy. And are you going to be prepared to go 5 rounds against Nate Diaz? Because that's what it's going to take, right?
Yeah.
And so, maybe he needs a different fight altogether. And he certainly needs to regroup. I think he needs to get off of Poirier. I think the UFC will oblige. They're done with that. And they do like to milk the cow, but they know when to stop. And I think they know that they can put Poirier in a title fight. And look, Poirier is a star now. They can now use Poirier to elevate Oliveira. And that's a great opportunity for them. And Conor will draw in his return against whoever they put him against.
I did think that they, like, promotionally, you had Charles Oliveira there in the building, and Megan O'Leary did interview him after the main event, but I mean, how many people saw that? I really would have had Oliveira interviewed right before the main event, and at least you have this gigantic audience, at least send them in the direction, because that's going to be a big question, Phil, is after 2 gigantic fights with Conor McGregor, what audience does Dustin Poirier come out of these pair of fights with? Like, that he can draw now, where he's going to be the A side in that fight with Charles Oliveira.
Yeah, it's very interesting to see. And, he's a charming individual himself, right? He's not a brash talker, but he does very well in interviews. He's a handsome chap. We already talked about the work he does in the community. So I definitely think that he has potential to be a draw for the UFC. Obviously not a mega draw like this, but I hope he can negotiate some pay-per-view points for that fight, because it sounds like he can't. He really needs to.
So that was the main event. Any kind of final thoughts on this? I mean, to me, it's going to be a very interesting path of what is next for Conor McGregor. I think this is one of those, defining fights just in terms of where is the career going. I think you certainly pump the brakes on if you were someone that was going into this fight thinking this is going to be the return to form of Conor McGregor. I think you're coming out of it with a pretty sobering reality.
Yeah, I mean, and it was a legacy fight, and he knew it. That's why he was yelling about the doctor's stoppage, right? He doesn't want a TKO. He wants, he needed a win. He really needed a win here to maintain relevance. He didn't get it. And can he be relevant again? I don't know, but he's going to get at least another crack at it in the future, I'm sure.
He will get as many chances as he is willing to take. I mean, he is going to have every advantage his way. I mean, it's the reason why if he had won this fight, he would have been skyrocketed and getting a championship fight. And I would not argue against that either. But that's
now I was sorry. Why don't you finish your thought?
No, that's all. I just think that it's, certainly a Conor McGregor is going to have a lot of advantages, whereas there are other fighters that are going to have to work that much harder to get back to a championship fight. For a Conor McGregor, he could, if he fights in the next year and wins one fight, that could justify a title fight.
Yes, that is correct. I do actually want to contradict myself a little bit. On prior shows and on the previous show, I said, he's willing to fight anybody. He loves to fight, and he'll fight forever, and he'll take weird fights against guys he has no business fighting. But this was the first time I ever saw that maybe he doesn't want to be in there. Like, what? Does he really want to go through all the, even for a comeback fight against an inferior, quote unquote, guy, it's still a full training camp. It's still beating your body up. It's still, potentially time away from your family. It's a lot. And he's the number one. He earned $180 million last. It's like, he doesn't need to prove anything. And what more could he even prove other than to himself that, he can still do it?
This injury will test that. Like, he's looking at probably a long road to recovery. And I think all those questions are going to be very relevant ones to ask. And we're not going to have the answers immediately. So I think certainly this is going to be kind of that, okay, Conor's, he's about to turn 33 years old next week. And what is what are the things you have left to do in your career? He puts it out there that he's going to fight as long as he can, but I mean, now you have to have that honest conversation with yourself internally about what is it that you're coming back for? What do you still want to do? And what are all the other things in that you have as options in life that you're saying no to by pursuing a fight career? Like, these are all questions that, not many fighters have the security that a Conor McGregor does financially. That, like, why are you going to go to these lengths to come back again?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Well, let's talk about the rest of the card. Gilbert Burns versus Stephen Thompson. Very important fight, I would say, for Stephen Thompson. And with Gilbert Burns, I mean, this was one where he is coming off that pretty emphatic loss to Kamaru Usman back in February. And I mean, a very simple fight to break down stylistically. We knew that Gilbert Burns was going to be the one that, if he can put Stephen Thompson down, this is a huge threat for Stephen Thompson. And in the opening round, Burns was able to get that takedown and landed numerous strikes on Stephen Thompson, busting up his mouth. And right before the end of the round, Thompson was able to get up and throw a head kick. The second round, Burns ends up taking a spin kick to the head, but responds with a right hand and gets a second takedown. And the end of this fight, the end of the second round, saw both men up against the fence and just wailing on one another to conclude the round. This was quite the battle on the ground between Burns and Thompson.
Was it like Don Fry and that legendary?
I saw that comparison.
Man?
That was a very liberal comparison to Fry and Takayama. That this moment, this sequence in the fight was compared to.
Well, they made it on the broadcast, so it wasn't just the Twitterverse chattering. I mean, but yeah, no, it was nothing like that. But it was a fun little exchange. Essentially, Burns was getting the better of Thompson. The round was ending. Thompson knew he couldn't get out of position, so rather than just eat the shots, he just fired back a few, and it was a fun way to end the round.
Thompson had his best strike of the fight in round number 3, where he was able to hit a spinning wheel kick and briefly drops Burns, who fires back at Thompson. Burns gets a body lock and gets the takedown. Thompson avoids a guillotine, but then Burns briefly mounts him, and he just unloads on Thompson towards the end of the round. I scored this fight 29-28 for Gilbert Burns. How did you have it?
I had it the same way. I gave Thompson the second round. The takedown and the punches at the end weren't enough for Burns, but he did a masterful job in the third round to control it, and then even finish emphatically. To the displeasure of the crowd. He kind of robbed us of a very entertaining Wonder Boy performance, but he did what needed to be done and did something that nobody does. He took down Wonder Boy repeatedly. That is not an easy task. So all credit to Gilbert Burns, a very impressive win. My book.
I screwed up my scorecard. I did give all 3 to Burns. The second was very close. I went right back and forth. That was a very close round. I saw a lot of people go with Thompson there. So, and all the judges had it the same way. So there you go. This is one. We talked about it on the preview show, Phil. Like, for Stephen Thompson, he's 38 years old. This is a very deep division. That's a tough loss for him.
Yeah, it's such a shame because he's looking good. It's like, he got up from the takedowns for the most part, and it's just it puts him so far back that you can't imagine him getting a title shot, but you can also imagine him beating so many guys in the division. It's a shame that I'd still like to see a Leon Edwards fight, although that seems more realistic for Burns at this point.
Yeah, it's this is one of those fights where, this fight to me is not going to bring him much closer to Kamaru Usman than he was going into this fight. It just eliminates a contender in Stephen Thompson. So I guess it's great news if you're Colby Covington and thought for any chance that fight was in doubt with Usman, that I don't think it was. And maybe a bit of a positive for Leon Edwards, who there is one less contender gunning for the next title fight if we all believe Covington gets the next one.
That's how it seems like it's going.
So I await Nate Diaz to be announced as the next challenger for Kamaru Usman.
What about Nate Diaz versus Wonder Boy? Wouldn't that be a great fight? That'd be such a good fight. I'd like
It'd
that.
be a weird fight.
I mean, it would it would really favor Wonder Boy so much. But hey, there's always that fifth round, Nate.
I would love just for, Nate to me is not like, I'm imagining like the press conference involving those two, but I think Nate would actually be very complimentary towards Stephen Thompson. I imagine he would have a lot of respect for Thompson.
I think so as well. How could you not? Wonder.
Tai Tuivasa and Greg Hardy. Buckle up, folks. Tuivasa comes out to Wannabe. This following up on his last entrance where he came out to Celine Dion.
Which is your favorite Spice Girl?
Ginger, 100%.
Oh, without a question. Because I heard this song the other day, and I really had to think, and I went through all of them, and pros and cons, and I came to my conclusion.
And?
Scary Spice. Scary Spice.
Okay.
Mel B.
All right.
Mel B.
Well, what were the pros and cons?
Well, I mean, she's obviously a very attractive woman. I mean, as they all are. She's athletic. I really love her hair. I love that hair. It's incredible. She had a career beyond the Spice Girls. I know I think was it America's Got Talent or one of those reality shows that she had a key role on. And she was, witty and charming on that. So that's why Mel B gets my pick.
Who would you say extended the Spice Girls fame the furthest between her and Victoria? Like those would be your candidates, right?
I mean, I guess, you're talking about Posh Spice, who of course is the wife of David Beckham. And so that association is sort of also like prolong the Spice Girls, theme. But I'm going to still go with Mel B. She's my girl. So I'm going to pick Mel B.
Okay.
Scary Spice.
So Greg Hardy did not come out to the Spice Girls. This fight begins, and Tuivasa is immediately kicking at Greg Hardy's legs, and my God, is Hardy feeling these. His legs are just buckling. And then Hardy comes at him, and he rocks Tuivasa. And Tuivasa is like staggered, and Greg Hardy senses the kill, and he walks into this counter left, and down goes Hardy. And Tuivasa finishes him with strikes, gets the knockout finish at 1 minute, 7 seconds of the opening round. And then what we got was just pure insanity with this post-match celebration by Tai Tuivasa. But the performance itself, this came as advertised.
That's right. This is what you prognosticated on the preview show, and you got what you expected, and we got what we hoped for. A lot of people have been hoping for a Greg Hardy getting TKO'd for a while now, and it finally got delivered in emphatic fashion. It was kind of reminiscent of the Czech Congo versus Pat Barry fight.
Pat Barry?
Yes. Yeah, yes. Reminded me of that one, but very dramatic fight, really exciting. I mean, I was really surprised. First of all, Greg Hardy is huge because Tuivasa is a big boy, and Hardy looked way bigger than him. And I was surprised that Hardy decided he was just going to throw down right in the middle of the cage. I didn't think that was the best strategy, and it turned out it wasn't.
So afterwards, Tai Tuivasa gets on to the octagon and downs a shoey. He does his interview with Joe Rogan and announces he wants to do a shoey with every single person in the T-Mobile Arena. So the camera follows him as he is making his way to the back. He is handed a shoe. He drinks out of it. And this fan had poured Dustin Poirier's hot sauce into the beer, which if they arrested this fan, it wouldn't have been enough of a punishment. What a horrible individual. Can you imagine? This guy's just competed, and you hand him a beer full of hot sauce? Should have spit it right back in this guy's face.
I mean, the nerve.
Joe Rogan was disgusted by this. Joe Rogan was the highlight, just absorbing what was happening here. But the best one, he is right. He's walking towards the back, and a guy on the balcony pours down a beer, and it just goes right down Tai Tuivasa's gullet. Dude, this man was just out of control, and I cannot imagine what state he is in as we are speaking several hours since this fight ended.
Apparently he parties hard, according to Daniel Cormier. Clearly he parties hard. I mean, just from his post-fight celebrations. Yeah, a bit quease-inducing, but tradition for Tai Tuivasa.
Do we see Greg Hardy again in the UFC, Phil?
How many in a row has he lost? It's like 2 in a row?
He's coming up. This is 2 in a row. He lost to Marcin Tybura in December. Think he gets another one?
I think he could get another one. You know, it was an exciting fight, right? That's sometimes criteria enough for the UFC, and heavyweight is thin. So I know he gets a decent payday, so that plays a factor. But I don't know. They seem to always put him in prominent positions. So I think he will see another fight. Yes.
When you get into entertaining heavyweight brawls, there is a longevity to that for your time with a promotion. Maybe not for your career, but I mean that I think he ends up getting another opportunity.
Yes.
Women's bantamweight we go to next. Irene Aldana and Yana Kunitskaya. Aldana missed weight by 3.5 pounds. She put out a message explaining issues that she had earlier in the week and apologizing profusely for missing weight and Kunitskaya taking the fight. This one went 4:35 of the first round. Aldana was landing as Kunitskaya came forward and busted up her nose, and Aldana landed, dropped Yana with this check left hook, and is just attacking her with this vicious ground and pound. She's relentless with her pressure and finishes Kunitskaya 4:35 of the first round. And Irene Aldana comes back after a loss to Holly Holm last October and said that maybe not today, maybe not tomorrow, but someday I will be the champion.
Maybe not any of those days.
Well, she should have clarified and said, maybe not today, maybe not tomorrow, maybe not any day where our current 135-pound women's champion, Amanda Nunes, wakes up and says, I am still fighting as a career.
Yeah. I mean, impressive win. Huge power discrepancy. I mean, Kunitskaya didn't have anything for her, but big weight miss on a massive card. You got to correct that. No, it's kind of like a neutral win, right? You really have to fix that.
A major thumbs up goes out to whoever was running the graphics on this pay-per-view, because as Joe Rogan was interviewing Aldana, they're doing the scroll of everyone's tweets, and there they throw up the infamous 2014 tweet from Bjorn Rebney, the famous one that just simply reads, Mexico.
Really? That's amazing. I didn't see that.
Shout out to Aaron Bronstetter, who caught this, and I, being diligent, went back, and yes, in fact, they put this tweet up right mid-speech from Aldana, from Bjorn Rebney. That is a level of humor that is rarely seen on the UFC broadcast that I thought was hysterical.
That's fantastic.
So major thumbs up to whoever made that call.
Yes, and shout out to Eric Marcotte, who I'm sure enjoyed that as well.
Oh, I'm certain of it. Okay, let's talk about this. This was the real main event of the whole night. Sean O'Malley and Kris Moutinho. Moutinho had come in on 11 days' notice, replacing Luis Smoka, fought in the CES organization, and had last competed in May. So not a whole lot of notice here. Comes in, made weight, and then had this fight with Sean O'Malley. Phil, I have never seen a fight that was so one-sided that the guy on the bad side of the scoring came out of this, like within a minute, this guy had already, in my opinion, won, because this dude took so much punishment in this fight, but my God, he is going to get a career out of this performance.
I mean, it was certainly an entertaining fight. I mean, he pretty much let left himself up for Sean O'Malley to land what can only be the most accurate performance in UFC
This was
history.
unbelievable. I don't know what the final stats were, but like in the middle of the fight, like the stats, dude, Moutinho was landing 27% of his significant strikes. Sean O'Malley, 82%. He was landing.
Yeah. So I know in the third round, he had landed over 200 shots and was still landing at over 80% at that point as well. And he was dancing around him. To Moutinho's credit, I mean, constant forward pressure, took O'Malley's best shot, kept coming forward, was talking smack at points. Moutinho actually had a little bit of success with some leg kicks early, and he got away. I mean, he
did as well as someone losing a 10-8 round could do in the first round. I'll put it that way. Okay, but I don't want to oversell. Yes. Like I never. It was. We're going to naturally oversell the performance, but it was like, dude, this guy almost lasted 3 rounds with Sean O'Malley, and it was insane to watch him absorb the punishment. And to Phil's point, this guy never backed down. He just came forward. In the first round, O'Malley landed 89 significant strikes, which is a new single round bantamweight record, according to John Anik. I had the first round at 10-8. The second round, a 10-9. And then the third, I was well on my way to giving him another 10-8 round. However, O'Malley he just is destroying this guy. He's landing knees to the face, brutal strikes, an uppercut, and finally, Herb Dean steps in and stops it. There was a lot of debate online about, I don't know, apparently, like, if you are just punished to such a degree, it's like a mark of pride that you make it to the end of the fight. I had absolutely no problem, none, with this stoppage. I mean, to me, if you think that Kris Moutinho comes out of this with all the praise in the world. He is probably Dana White's favorite fighter after watching this. I can guarantee it. An extra 27 seconds of this damage that he was taking, I did not need to see. If we transform this performance into a boxing ring, I don't think his corner even sends him out for the final round. There was no path to victory for Kris Moutinho. Herb Dean did him a favor. Did you disagree?
No, I didn't disagree. I mean, I understand why people were saying, because the finishing sequence didn't look so bad. But just 5 seconds before that, Herb said, "Protect yourself," and then he ate a combo. And then he ate a second combo.
That uppercut, dude, his head just went into the MGM Grand across the street.
Yeah, exactly. So it's like in boxing, defend yourself means throw back, right? And he didn't even throw back. So yeah, it was fine. The stoppage was fine. He was not going to do anything other than eat more shots in the.
Dude, don't feel like Kris Moutinho. He comes out of this he is he couldn't have sold himself better. He is going to be, I think his next fight.
Well, he's apparently $75,000 richer as well.
Well,
because that made fight of the night.
He promised it. He did say that on the embedded. He said, "I don't guarantee a win. I don't guarantee a loss, but I do guarantee fight of the night." So you know what? Mystic Mac might be not making predictions anymore, and his prediction's not coming true. But we've got now Mystic Moutinho.
Do you think that was the best fight in the night? There was another one that was pretty good a couple earlier that I'm sure we're going to get to.
We will get to it. That would be another candidate. This one, to me, I have a hard time seeing this one as fight of the night as opposed to performance of the night. But my God, it's I think Kris Moutinho gets a lot of extra points because of the circumstances of him taking this fight and the performance he gave.
Yes, we'll see. Look, I'm happy that he got paid because it was bad circumstances. I mean, he ate so many shots, so the best, at least he can get some cash to help him heal. I'm sure that will, heal his wounds just fine. So it's okay.
His face was just a mess by the end of this, just the compound strikes that just built up on this poor guy's face.
Actually, let me just add one point to this, because it kind of reminds me of Usman versus Masvidal, right? Because it's like O'Malley pieced this guy up in a special way. Like, he really put on a clinic here. He was doing some basketball dribbles in the first round. He was showboating a lot. And even as the pressure kept coming, he kept landing and kept evading. So it was a masterclass by O'Malley. And O'Malley took the fight also on short notice. Had O'Malley had the time to prepare, I'm fairly certain he would have gotten this guy out of there a lot earlier.
So they did announce tonight the attendance was 20,062. Gate was 16.76 million. And the performance of the night bonuses went to Tuivasa and Dricus du Plessis, that we will talk about in a minute. And fight of the night did go to O'Malley and Moutinho.
Okay. All right. Congratulations, Moutinho.
Let's quickly just talk about the prelims here. Carlos Condit versus Max Griffin. They went the full 3 rounds. I had Max Griffin winning the first and the third round. I gave round number 2 to Carlos Condit, but I thought a clear victory here for Max Griffin. Although I thought he slowed down definitely in the second round, and Condit was able to capitalize. It was a very close second round, but I did give it to Condit, and then Griffin kind of just poured it on in the third. So I thought a fairly standard fight to score.
I agree 100%.
100%.
I had the exact same way. Exactly.
Let's go to Eric Marcotte's main event of the night. Niko Price versus Michel Pereira. And Pereira won the first 2 rounds. This was highlighted by this dude doing a standing backflip and then ending up mounting Niko Price. Now, John McCarthy brought up a very important warning for Pereira for the future, that had this guy, even with a backflip, you come down heels first, that's an illegal stomp to a downed opponent. So beware of that in the future.
Well, if you're planning on just ending up in mount, what does it matter?
Well, I mean, this guy was landing feet first. He wasn't landing, belly on top into mount immediately. This guy's out of his mind. He's just out of his mind.
Yeah, it just ended up that way. It was a ridiculous move, but entertaining nonetheless.
Niko Price had a really good third round. I gave the third to him. Pretty strong round. I wouldn't go further than 10-9, but I thought 29-28 for Pereira, and that is how all 3 judges scored it. And Pereira has now won 3 in a row, and I was very nervous when Pereira lifted up Niko Price onto his shoulders and started walking around. I was like, this is a disaster waiting to happen, and I would be scared out of my mind if I was Niko Price up there.
Yeah, it didn't look good. I wonder if they didn't get the bonus because of the backflip, because I know Dana hates that stuff. So I wonder if he just really dislikes that type of stuff. So,
honestly, as like a back and forth fight, it's hard to go against O'Malley and Moutinho. It was just so much of that. Like, it was my only hesitancy on fights like that is like, it's just, there was so much like one-way traffic in that fight. Whereas when I look at, what is the best fight, I think you want to have that back and forth. And this one, I mean, it got close in the third round. I think if Niko Price was able to, it was not going into like 10-8 territory, but it was, to me, made a lot closer after that third round. But I completely understand why they went where they did. That was a pretty spectacular performance.
Yeah, spectacular performance on the pay-per-view. So yeah, I get it. It's fine, but this was a good fight. It was entertaining. It delivered. Even though Pereira was tired in the third round, I thought he fought very smart. He still was able to counter and, clinch and do what he needed to do to survive. But he's definitely going to need to figure out how to maintain a pace through more than 2 rounds.
Ryan Hall, Ilia, Topuria. Very interesting fight going into this. And watching this, if you had not been exposed to Ryan Hall, you got to see Ryan Hall in action here, who came out with like a spinning wheel kick and then was just constantly just rolling towards Topuria, who was avoiding him. And there was a point where he was literally dragging Hall by the wrist. Topuria connects with a left hand. He landed several strikes, and it seemed at this point, Phil, that he started to figure out some patterns of Ryan Hall and was able to kind of figure out that rhythm. And he finds his opening, and he lands on Hall and starts dropping these hammer fists and strikes and stops him by KO at 4:47 of the first round. Ilia Topuria improves to 11-0, and Ryan Hall falls to 8-2.
Yeah, Ryan Hall, pretty disappointing performance. He pretty much was singular focused with this. He kept doing this like sort of knee bar attack roll to try to capture a leg. It was unsuccessful many times. At one point, he had his back was about to be taken, and so he got up with sort of like a headlock and stood up, and then Topuria caught it later and stopped it and just started pounding on him, and Hall had nowhere to go and was pretty much just like flatlined right there. Really bad performance. Like I don't know what the game plan was here, because there was only one game plan and it was executed extremely poorly.
Yeah, I mean, Topuria is a real intriguing featherweight to keep your eyes on, and I think that with Ryan Hall, it's if people are going to follow like this template and kind of figure out how to deal with the awkwardness, I mean, this was clearly something that Topuria was ready for and figured out in the first round. So Ryan Hall is a very tough opponent to find guys that are interested in fighting him. It's like it's not like it's a big name. It's somebody that is not everyone's cup of tea. Like I find him really entertaining to watch, but I don't know if I represent the majority.
Yeah, I mean, he's not going to be somebody who is going to draw, he's not going to be a headliner. That's just pretty clear. But, if you think about a television show and an MMA card is like, a variety of things. You want to have lightweight fighters, you want to have heavyweight fighters, you want to have female fighters, you want to have submission fighters along with strikers. He has a role to fill. So I think, he does draw an audience, but he has to get some wins. And normally he does, but, this is not a performance that indicates that you should be competing with the elite of mixed martial art.
And then we had Dricus du Plessis defeat Trevin Giles, a minute 41 of the second round. Du Plessis was coming off the fence and dropped this dude with a right hand and just finished him with several follow-up strikes. This was after the first round where Du Plessis got the mount in the final seconds and was going for a guillotine. He had a strong first round and then dropped him in the second round. I thought he had a really good performance. This guy, he fought in EFC Africa. This was his 18th fight. He hasn't gone to the judges once in his career.
Yeah, I mean, at first I was a little bit concerned because he was getting pieced up a little bit on the feet, and he had a very unconventional sort of movement pattern and guard. But then once the grappling exchanges started happening, he was pretty dominant there. And then in the second round, I just a perfectly timed counter shot, went for the kill, and performance of the night. Awarded, well deserved. Somebody who's competed in KSW, big promotion as well. So definitely somebody to keep an eye on for sure.
And then quickly here, I'll just read the results from the early prelims. We had Zhalgas Zhumagulov submit Jerome Rivera. Did you get to see this? This was quite the submission.
I did, yeah. Yeah, it was amazing, yeah.
He got the left arm wrapped around and then grabbed his bicep. Would you describe this, Phil? This was very impressive.
Yeah, so typically when you get like a normal like guillotine, you would keep your sort of like the crook of your arm in their throat. But he shot his arm all the way through, almost as if he was going through a darce. And then he captured his bicep, and then he just squeezed it as if he almost had a rear naked. This is like what you would do if you had a rear naked choke. But then he had his head buried in his chest. So he's curling the neck and head while he's squeezing the arms with this grip that's inside the bicep, that you can't break that grip. So when your head is compressed and you're getting choked, it's over. There's no escape from that. And it was a masterful submission.
In a just world, this man would have got a $75,000 bonus.
Yeah.
Brad Tavares defeated Omari Akhmedov by split decision with 29-28 scores, 2 going his way and 1 for Akhmedov. And Jennifer Maia beat Jessica Ai by unanimous decision. The frightening image that came out of this was a cut to the forehead of Jessica Ai that apparently required 13 stitches. And Maia got the unanimous decision, and Jessica Ai, many people were noting, got a third eye.
That's right. Yes. It was gruesome. The fight was actually a pretty entertaining one. I actually scored it for Ai. I gave her rounds 1 and 3. I thought she had effective boxing, but maybe the gash was a little bit too much for the judges, and they all agreed. So what do I know?
Well, all 3 judges had the first 2 rounds for Maia, and then 2 of them had it for Ai in the third. However, the media scores up at MMA Decisions, they were like 9-8 in favor of Jessica Ai the last time I checked. Okay. So media scores, they were split and, slightly ahead for Jessica Ai. So they agreed with you, Phil.
Okay. All right.
I thought this was a pretty entertaining show. I think that I think that Sean O'Malley, Kris Moutinho fight is going to be a pretty memorable one in that they are going to reference a lot. And I think it's going to be one of those Dana White fights that he's going to always be referring to, of guys taking short notice fights, because look at what this can open the doors for. And I could really see Kris Moutinho being one of those Dana White guys that he just loves and uses it as a selling point for fighters to take short notice fights.
Sure, yeah, and he'll promote him. He'll give him a T-shirt. He'll do all that. One thing to say, when we were sort of debating what the fight of the night was going to be ahead of time, we kept omitting Conor, right? But Conor, he's lost a lot of all his recent fight, right? You can make a lot of criticisms about where he fits in, the rankings and all that. But is he not the most exciting fighter of all time? Like, he's every single Conor McGregor fight, not only just in the anticipation and the excitement around the event, but even in the fights themselves. They are incredibly exciting, and it's always must-see television.
I don't disagree at all. I think when you go look at his fights, they're pick a fight. Like, find your Conor McGregor fight that was dull.
Max Holloway, that's the best example. That's the best one you can get. And he's fighting injured in that one, right? And
I was at that years ago. I was at that card in Boston. Yeah.
What was it like?
Back in the days when Conor McGregor was brought back to do the media scrums.
Oh, did you get to talk to him?
I did get to talk to him, yes.
Uh-oh. Could you sense then that a star was in the making?
I think if you go back to that was his second UFC fight. And that week, they gave him his own workout day. He was you could see the UFC was on the bandwagon instantly after the Marcus Brimage fight, where he's on the Facebook prelims, this guy has something. And it was more so the press conference afterwards. That's the one where he's got the watch and he's saying how 3 people died making this watch. And it was man, he had the whole place just cracking up. Chael Sonnen's up there. That's the night he beat Shogun. And man, it was, you could certainly see just the reaction to him, very strategic, putting him in Boston, that this guy was going to be a big star. You didn't know how big, but it was very evident.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
All right. Well, before we get out of here, coming up over the next couple of weeks, we'll just read you out some of the cards. Next week, we've got Islam Makhachev and Thiago Moises in the main event. But maybe what's going to have more attention, Phil, is going to be the return of Miesha Tate after 5 years, as she's going to be returning to take on Marion Renault. What do you think about the Miesha Tate comeback?
Yeah, curious one. I mean, if she's
there's not a lot of depth at 135. Like,
yeah.
I can totally see. I don't like. I actually this week rewatched the Amanda Nunes Miesha Tate fight, and man, that was not a good night for Miesha Tate.
Honestly, like that's my biggest problem with it is that even when she was champion, she wasn't really the best fighter in the division. Like she was getting pieced up by Holly Holm, and she was able to get the win, and it was a great moment, and she was a great fighter in her time. But like that was so long ago when she was like number 2 behind Ronda Rousey, and so the idea that she is gonna make so much improvement, that she's gonna be a contender now, it's hard to believe. And then in terms of her star power, she was a popular fighter. The rivalry with Ronda was certainly a big deal, but I don't know how much of that is going to be a draw right now. I mean, I'm intrigued by it. I like Miesha Tate. I wish her the best, but I'm not terribly optimistic about what to expect.
Yeah, I mean, presuming that Amanda Nunes beats Juliana Pena, if Miesha Tate were to win next weekend, I could totally see them going and instantly throwing Miesha into that title fight.
Why not? I mean, why not? You want star power. There's not too many people. There aren't really too many other female stars other than the champions and, Holly Holm, and she's gotten enough shots at it. So, yeah, I definitely could see Miesha Tate getting an accelerated
Holm
shot.
And Tate in a rematch, I have way more interest in right now than seeing Tate throwing at Amanda Nunes.
I think that's I mean, look, Holm is the queen of fight night main events in Arizona, or New Mexico. So you do that there and be a great one.
The weekend after, July 24th, is Corey Sandhagen and the returning TJ Dillashaw. So a very important fight for Dillashaw. Sandhagen's coming off that mauling of Frankie Edgar this year.
Yeah, huge fight for Dillashaw. I mean, how many times have we seen the promo for this documentary about the incredible suffering and comeback that TJ has endured through this 2-year arduous journey to return to glory? I mean, can't we all wait for the triumphant reclaiming of the crown for TJ Dillashaw?
They are pushing it very hard about this man missing 2 years because of failing his drug test. The weekend after that is Uriah Hall against Sean Strickland in the main event. And then UFC 265 is on August the 7th. Derek Lewis, Cyril Gahn for the big interim heavyweight championship, which will also feature on the main card Amanda Nunes and Juliana Pena, Jose Aldo against Pedro Munoz, and Michael Chiesa versus Vicente Luque. That's the Aldo and Chiesa fights. Those are some nice main card additions.
Absolutely. I mean, very happy to see Chiesa back. His performances at welterweight have been amazing. He's a type of fighter that is, a couple wins and he's right there in the title.
People don't talk enough about him in that welterweight mix. Like he beats Luque. He is he's certainly ahead of Thompson, and he's right in that level with like Edwards. And I mean, a win here is very big for Chiesa and Luque as well. Like he's got a very deceptive record that people don't pay a whole lot of attention to. He's won his last 3. He's coming off the Woodley win, so it's an important fight for him equally.
I agree, and even in the Thompson loss that he had a couple years ago, he looked pretty good. There was improvements to be made there, so Luque is still a contender. Yeah, I like that fight a lot. But you did skip over the previous week. There is something else going on the previous weekend.
Well, Phil, this is how a professional ends things, because usually this is where I would say that is the next time we will be talking to you, UFC 265, but that is not the case, because we will be coming at you with a post show right after Bellator 263. Now, I'm sure you're asking, wait a minute, what is happening with Bellator 263? Well, it is one of the biggest fights in Bellator history, if I do say so myself, as Patricio Pitbull Freite, one of the best fighters in the world, defends the featherweight championship against AJ McKee. They're fighting for the championship, $1 million, and that has clearly got the interest of not just Phil Chertok, but also Eric Marcotte. So we will have a preview show for you that week. We're going to bring everyone up to speed on what's happening in the world of Bellator, why this main event has everyone's focus, and then we will have a post show on Saturday night, July the 31st, and I'm looking forward to switching it up and doing a Bellator show with you, Phil.
Yeah, it's good that it's also a nice Bellator main event with homegrown stars, right? McKee is somebody that, as we talked about on the preview show briefly, Showtime has been investing a lot into. They put him on the boxing cards, had him sitting beside Steven Espinoza. And then you have Pitbull, who is such an amazing fighter, such an incredible highlight reel record, somebody who's always in exciting fights as well, and a longtime staple in Bellator. So yeah, this is an incredible fight, one that we're looking forward to, and should be a lot of fun to talk to you and Eric about it. Yeah.
So look forward to that, the final week of July, and let's not promise and not deliver. You did want to give your quick thoughts on the broadcast tonight on UFC. It was very heavy on a lot of different hosts throughout the show. Like usually it's Megan O'Leary in that role, and I think Megan is phenomenal in that role. But tonight we had Laura Sanko on the broadcast. We also had Karen Bryant outside for some reason with Max Kellerman, like they weren't inside the building. Then we had another desk which featured Stephen A. Smith, Dominic Cruz, Michael Bisping. Like there was a lot of added elements, and I was kind of surprised, Phil, that we never went back to any of these desks. It was one check-in, and that was it. Or at the beginning of the show, they never went back to them.
Okay, so I'm gonna rant a little bit here. Before we even got to the pay-per-view, they had these promos, these like prolonged promo videos. Poirier doing the Teddy Roosevelt speech, the man in the arena.
Right. The man in the arena. They had.
Oh my God! There was at least 3 god awful promos that were excessively long, cheesy, horribly written. Cormier did one on the history of trilogies early. That was horrible as well. The writing is so atrocious. The lead-in programmings throughout the week, the UFC weigh-in show, ESPN Now, this thing with Cormier, it's just garbage. They're just UFC hype machine. It's no analysis. It's no thoughtful analysis. It's just trash to just, I don't know, lure in the most moronic, generic sports fan. And it's so insulting to me. I don't even know what to say. I can't stomach even a second of this coverage. The weigh-in show was so brutally atrocious. And then and then they go to Max Kellerman and Stephen A. Smith during the pay-per-view portion of the show, which, from my understanding, the UFC is the one who's producing this. So you're telling me that the UFC is now paying? So that means the UFC is paying Max Kellerman and Stephen A. Smith. This is the same thing that they were criticizing Ariel for, back in the Fox days. I know there's a lot of contention about whatever deal ESPN offered. If Ariel had to pay to leave ESPN, it was worth it, because it's not the worldwide leader in MMA coverage. It's the worldwide leader in UFC hype machine, and I can't stand it. And that's why I can't watch any of that shoulder programming. I'm sorry. I can watch the fights, and that's about it. So there we go.
Damn, got a big rant out of Phil tonight. Well, that is going to end things on a spirited note from Phil Chertok. Thank you very much for all of your thoughts, your opinions. That's what people come here for, Phil.
Look, I couldn't take it anymore. Sometimes I feel like I'm a bit of like the UFC apologist. Like, people complain about Rogan as a commentator. I don't find that bad, but there is a limit. There is a limit to how much you can insult the audience. And I've been a fan for so long. You're just like urinating on me. I can't take it. Please just give me some normal programming.
Do you want to end on a light note then?
Yes, please.
From I guess this was from Dana White's press conference tonight. This comes from a friend of the show, Andreas Hale. Dana White explains that he was, quote, fired up, and that's the reason he increased the fight bonuses to $75,000. But when asked if he'd make it permanent, he said no, and that it would, quote, break the budget. Good night, everybody. For Phil, I am John. Thank you for tuning in to our UFC 264 post show.